Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, brought to you by the Raider Ramble and sponsored by MyBookie and Chucky's Thugs. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with T3 Raider Facts, and we're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
All right, Heidi, it's Chiefs week. It's finally here, and we've got our Raiders back home, so let's go.
Today on the show, we'll take a closer look at the game against the Giants. We'll preview the Chiefs, our next opponent on the schedule, and then we'll bring in our special guest this week, Christopher Gabriel, the morning host of KMJ Now News Talk Radio in Fresno, California. It's going to be a great show.
Okay, Raider Nation, we would love to hear from you, so here's how you can get in touch with us. Give us a call on the Only Nation podcast voicemail line at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667.
Here's the latest Raider news.
The Raiders went into the Meadowlands in New Jersey and came away with a 23-16 loss to the Giants. That loss, coupled with wins by everybody else in the division, means that there are two teams that are 5-3 and two teams that are now 5-4 at the halfway point of the regular season.
You know, and I'll mention this a little bit later. The loss didn't totally shock me. It did surprise me. But the fact that they came out a little flat was understandable given everything that's happened. But they were still in the game until the very end. Bad games are going to happen. Now, the important thing is what they do with this. Do they bounce back? That's the important thing.
Yeah, it really wasn't surprising to me after the week they had. Gosh, it's just been a really tough few weeks to be a Raider and a Raiders fan. So I wasn't surprised after that. Not that that's an excuse. They're still professionals, but it's certainly understandable. A lot has been said and written about the Henry Ruggs tragedy. Because the events happened since our last podcast, we're just going to sum it up and then move on. Less than 24 hours after the crash last week, the Raiders released Ruggs. He has received emotional support from friends, fans, former teammates, and coaches, but there seems to be little doubt that he is facing a serious prison sentence. One attorney who has defended over 500 DUI cases told Yahoo Sports' Dan Wenzel he said that the circumstances are the worst he has ever seen in such cases.
And we'll mention this a little bit later too, but I want to mention the name Tina Tintor, and I want to mention that name. And I want Raider Nation fans to remember that name. This is a name and a face and a family who has kind of been largely unnoticed and underserved, I guess, as far as this whole tragedy goes. And we need to remember, regardless of what happens with Henry Ruggs and in terms of rebuilding his life, this young lady's life was taken away and has destroyed the entire family. We need to all be mindful of that. We need to be thankful of the blessings we have surrounding us, but we also have to have the value placed on every life, especially this one.
Yes, and there is a GoFundMe that was set up by a relative of hers that has received quite a bit of support. When I checked it this morning, it was at $94,000, and hopefully it'll continue to bring in support. That's one of the very few things that we can do, but it's something, and I don't know. I feel it's important for us fans to support them however we can.
And I can tell you right now that on behalf of the Only Nation podcast, we will be making a contribution.
Yes. Derek Carr did not have a good game against the Giants. He was 30 for 46 for 296 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions, one of which was a pick six. But he missed on a few critical passes and just didn't seem totally in sync with his receivers. But despite all that, the ball was in his hands at the end of the game with a chance to at least tie.
And the important thing is that the Raiders did have a bad game, but they were in it until the very end. Good teams do that. Good teams are in a position where even if they don't play up to their highest potential, they're still in a position to win. Maybe that's something that the Raiders can pick up and move with as they go forward into the season, is that they can still lay an egg, play a bad game, and yet be in it until the end, unlike the Atlanta game last year. I use that as the example of what happens when the team just totally lays down and gives up. So hopefully this is something that they can learn from and move ahead.
Yeah, it was a tough game, but we were in the red zone 6 times. Now, the red zone futility was very frustrating, but the fact is we still got there, so that's good. Now, out of those 6 times, only once was it converted for a touchdown, so that's something that we have to work on, but like you said, it's better than the Atlanta game.
Anything was better than that.
And the 2 big roster moves to report are the release of 2020 first-round draft pick Damon Arnette and the addition of free agent wide receiver Deshaun Jackson. Arnett's release stems from multiple lawsuits, including an alleged hit-and-run incident from last year and a recent video that popped up in which Arnette was brandishing a gun and threatening violence. At the same time the Raiders were severing ties with Arnette, they were bringing on board free agent wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, who comes over from the Rams, having been drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles back in the 2008 draft. Jackson is a 3-time Pro Bowler who, in addition for playing for the Eagles and the Rams, has also had stints with Tampa Bay and Washington.
And I don't want to pile on Arnette, but I will just say I was disappointed in the fact that this draft pick didn't work out. There were some red flags anyway. Mayock has admitted that. They're just going to have to take the hit on that and hope that they don't repeat a performance with the draft pick going forward. Now, I'm pleased with the decision to sign wide receiver Deshaun Jackson, but I hope that Raider fans don't expect too much from him. Yes, he does have speed. Yes, he can stretch the field, but he is a shadow of the 3-time Pro Bowler that he once was. So I hope that Raider Nation tempers their enthusiasm a little bit and doesn't think that he's going to step right in and set the world on fire.
All we need is for him to run the go routes and keep the defense honest by stretching the field. And I think that since he does still have the speed, that's something that he's going to be able to do. The Raiders family is also saddened by the passing of John Marshall, who served as defensive coordinator for the Silver and Black from 2009 to 2010. The thoughts and prayers of the entire Raider Nation are with the Marshall family at this time.
And, with all the tragedy and the bad news that we've had in the last couple of weeks, somebody would probably comment and say, well, here's just another bit of bad news. But once again, this is a person. This is an individual. This is a member of the Raiders family. As Raider Homer has said once and has said many times, once a Raider, always a Raider. And so we remember John Marshall, all that he brought, the passion that he brought to the defensive side as defensive coordinator during the 2009-2010 stretch. And once again, the thoughts and prayers of the entire Raider Nation are with the Marshall family.
Okay, there's a lot to talk about, not much of it good. And then there's a lot that needs fixing. But we're going to have to turn this thing around quickly because we have a division opponent coming up. So let's reflect on what went wrong and what we can do differently. Well, my breakdown of the game, I've already kind of touched on it. We were in the red zone 6 times and we scored 1 touchdown. That's really not acceptable. Let's see what the breakdown was. 6 times in the red zone, scored 1 touchdown, attempted 4 field goals, missed 1, and a quarterback fumble and loss of possession. The run was working for us. I don't know why we abandoned it in the red zone. For once this season, the run was working for us, and we just left it by the wayside. I don't understand why we did it. It seemed like our previous coach was calling plays again. We got really conservative. And I don't know, the defense did great. Defense only allowed them to score 16 points. And even though we did lose 23-16, since one of those touchdowns was a pick 6, the defense ended up only allowing 16 points. They did their job. It was the offense that let us down. And it's understandable that they had a lot going on in their mind. The Raiders, of course, said that the Henry Brooks incident had nothing to do with it. Well, yes, it did. It took them out of sync. It's a lot to deal with. I don't think there's really much that can be done to adjust that other than come out, play good football, and put down the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs are the type of team that we can do that with, especially at home. The Raiders are just going to have to do it. Going to have to pull it together. I know Derek Carr was extremely mad at himself after the Giants game. I don't want to put the loss on one player, but he took the blame himself. 2 interceptions. He had a terrible game. He can do better, and I think he will do better. I think he's going to improve in the Chiefs game, and we are going to see the Derek Carr of old.
Oh, I definitely think they'll turn it around. Now, I was disappointed by the game, though I must admit I was not shocked. The Raiders traditionally don't travel east very well, and they've been sketchy coming out of the bye week the last several years. Now, the Giants came out and did what they needed to do, and the Raiders, quite frankly, did not. Now, even after Derek threw the pick six, I still thought they were in it, and I fully expected them to come down, score at the end, and take it into overtime. But now there's a lot of parity in this league. Look what happened to the Bills against Jacksonville. And I don't think anybody saw coming what the Broncos did to the Cowboys. The Raiders just need to flush this game, get past it. Take out all their frustrations on the Chiefs and not let them back in. We cannot let them back in. If the Giants taught us anything, it's a reminder that this is a week-to-week league. 5-3 is okay, but 6-3 would be a lot better.
It really would be. And we'll get there.
We will.
Okay, we've got the Chiefs coming up. What's going to be the key to victory? Who wins? And what is your score prediction? We'll start with T3.
All right. The division is suddenly tight again, but the Raiders can still control their own destiny. The last time they had a really bad loss, they were able to put it behind them and pick up 2 big wins. The first of those was a division win against the Broncos. So they need to do that again. This week, Derek needs to get back on track. The defense just needs to keep doing what they're doing. So I see the Raiders coming back with a solid performance against Kansas City. It may not be a blowout, but it doesn't have to be. All the Raiders have to do is just win. And I say that the Raiders will come out on top 24-20. Heidi, what do you have?
I think the key to victory is going to be that the run defense comes to play and our red zone efficiency. I know I've already harped on the red zone efficiency, but those are the 2 things. A run defense needs to come to play, red zone efficiency. Everything else was, we seem to have settled down pretty good. The offensive line has been settling down pretty good. The defensive line is just plain scary. And even the defensive backfield has been great. I mean, talk about Nate Hobbs. What kind of a game did he have against the Giants? That was crazy.
Yeah, he did have a couple of big penalties.
Yeah, but he also had a couple of really big plays.
He did.
And of course, Yannick Ngakoue, he had a really good game again, another couple sacks. So I think that's going to make the difference, the run defense and red zone efficiency for the offense.
Yeah, they need to put that ball into the end zone.
And I do think the Raiders are going to come back and win it. I do think that they will recover like they did against the Broncos. I don't think it'll be a trouncing, although it could be. They have the ability to really make this a blowout. But I'm going to say it's still going to be a comfortable win. It's going to be 27-17.
Okay, I like your prediction much better than mine. I'd take a 10-point win. I love that.
Yeah. And now, Raider Nation, we would like to introduce this week's special guest. Christopher Gabriel, the morning anchor for KMJ Now in Fresno, California, is a longtime news and sports talk host. He has appeared on numerous other programs. He has been on with Scott Gulbranson, one of our former guests, and goes way back with your boy Q of the Locked On Raiders podcast and Raider Nation Radio. Just this past week alone, he has been a guest on KTIK in Boise, Idaho, Fox Sports in Knoxville, Tennessee, and also served as a host on KNBR in San Francisco. It is our pleasure to welcome to our program the super smart and well-versed Christopher Gabriel to the Only Nation podcast. Thank you for joining us, Christopher.
Well, I don't know about the super smart. That's very kind. The check is in the mail, but it's great to be with both of you. Nothing I enjoy more than talking a little football, and especially dialing in with Raiders football. You mentioned Scott Gilbranson and your boy Keont Myers, a couple of guys who've been on my show many, many times. Great guys. So let's have some fun.
Let's do that. And you picked a great week as far as news is concerned.
Oh man,
or the worst.
Or the worst. I don't know. It's one of those things, and I think you both, Heidi and Tom, you both would agree. It's one of those moments, this inflection moment, I think, for the Las Vegas Raiders, where you don't really want to say what next because there's been too much of that already.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to cover that in the questions that we have. Heidi, why don't you go first?
All right. The Raiders have been involved in a lot of news stories over the past few months, many of them bad. How can the team image continue to improve over time, or is that even possible at this point?
It's a great question, Heidi, and the image can improve. It will improve. If we backtrack for a moment, here's a franchise that was beset with all kinds of, I'm not going to say problems, but a lot of push and pull in the Bay Area. Are they going to stay? Are they going to leave? And then they were going to leave. They did leave. And that left a lot of ill will behind in that area, as well as here in Fresno. And I suspect we'll maybe get to that at some point. But you get to Las Vegas and, last year, the year before, the COVID and all of this. And now you have John Gruden and everything that happened with that. And then the absolute horrific tragedy with Henry Ruggs. And so how does the organization proceed forward? So I'm an outsider. I'm 400 miles away, 300 miles away. But I'll tell you, guys, it strikes me that the Raiders as an organization right now, for an organization that I consider one of the very best in sports, I feel like they're hitting the wrong notes right now. We're hearing about they're a family, and they, could they have done more with Henry, and should somebody have been there to help him? And I understand all that, and that makes sense. But a poor young lady and her dog were burned alive in her car. And I feel like to move forward, and again, this is just one man's opinion, but I think to move forward, I think there needs to be a greater sensitivity, a greater understanding of the loss of life here. You can be, and they should be, supportive of Henry moving forward. But I think that they need to put a focus and emphasis on the loss of life here, because from the outside looking in, what we're seeing here is something of a detachment. Even on the game on Sunday against the Giants, the subject wasn't touched, and I was paying note for this. The subject wasn't touched until 55 minutes into the broadcast. And I think, as we always say, organizations, when something like this happens, and thankfully it doesn't happen often, but when it does, they have to get out ahead of it. And the Raiders did not get out ahead of this, Heidi and Tom. They simply did not get out ahead of this. And quite frankly, the network didn't either. And as they're starting to talk about it, then they're giving us the commentary on the play, and I forget what play it was, but I thought this is terrible. I mean this, and listen, I'm someone who, again, I've grown in the 7 years I've lived out here to really like the Raiders. I mean, I'm a born and raised Chicago, and I'm a Bears fan, but I've grown to really like the Raiders, and I enjoy what they're about. But I think for them to move forward, I think they need to do more and focus on what happened to this young lady and her dog. And I don't mean they have to talk about it every day, but they have to give us a greater sense that they understand the loss of life here. Henry's going to have a long, long road ahead, but this other family has lost their daughter forever.
I totally agree with you on that. And I think this story has kind of been buried needlessly. And I really wish the organization had come forth and done a little bit more up front. But again, that's on the shoulders of the organization.
Yeah, it really is. And when this first happened, my first thought was the person who needs to get out front on this is Mark Davis. I mean, when you're the son of Al Davis, and we've certainly seen, we know the kind of owner, you know better than I do, the kind of owner that Mark Davis is. He's a proactive guy. Think about last year when he said, and I'm assuming that he stuck to this, when he said, if our fans can't go into Allegiant Stadium, then gosh darn it, that may not have been the words he used, but I'm not going to go in there either. And I thought that was great. I thought that was a great statement. And coming from him and from what I know about him, it resonated truthfully to me. And so the way he got out in front of that, I think that he should have gotten out in front of this. And I've not heard a lot. And I mean, I've been reading the papers. I've not really heard a lot from him. So maybe I'm missing it, but I've not heard a lot from him. And I feel like he needs to get out there and be a leader on this.
Yeah, I don't think there actually has been a statement by Mark Davis himself. There, of course, would have been the Raiders' official statements, but from him himself, I don't believe he's given an interview or a statement on it yet.
Well, Heidi, the thing is, and Tom, the thing is, I understand there's certainly legal ramifications here, and I suspect that the folks who are, the legal folks who are behind and supporting the Raiders are being very careful as to what is and isn't said. But there has to be something that he can come out in the way of an official statement that doesn't tread into anywhere that's going to put him and the organization into a further precarious position where they are being mindful of one side of it, protecting the organization, but at the other side of it, really, paying tribute and being sensitive and respectful and mindful of what happened to this young lady and her dog.
As a follow-up question, where do you think the Raiders organization stands in the realm of social awareness and social justice? And who from the Raiders needs to be that leader?
Derek Carr, Derek Carr, Derek Carr. I think when it comes to social awareness and social justice, this is an area that I think the Raiders have always understood. And I think, going back, I don't want to date myself, but I mean, going back a lot of years, they have always been an organization. And again, I'm not telling you or your terrific audience anything that they or you don't know, but they've always been on the edge, right? They've always been cutting edge. They've always been willing to take players that maybe are on the edge. But at the same time, I've always viewed that as a bit of a positive, because they're going to say, you know what, we're going to bring somebody in and we believe he has value, and we believe there's more value to us and the community than just as a football player. And I think the social awareness part of that really has always been a part of who the Raiders are, much more than a lot of other organizations. And I think the social justice part, I think that's something that only in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, going back to Colin Kaepernick and certainly some other players around the league, I think that's a movement that is overdue. A lot of folks won't agree with that, and that's okay. They have a right to disagree with that. But I think the social justice part of this is something that the Raiders also are in tune with. And as far as a leader, Derek Carr, in my view, is the leader of this team, of this organization, outside of somebody like Mark Davis here and certainly of Mike Mayock. And and I would point out to your audience that even though I'm in Fresno, and I like to point this out to my audience over the years, they know I'm not a Fresnan. I'm not a native of Fresno. I'm not a Fresno State grad. So I come to Derek Carr with a level of objectivity. But Derek's been a guest on my program 4 times, and his brother David's been on twice. So I like Derek. He's a guy who I would say early on when I first met him on my program, he was quietly careful with me, but he's gotten much more open over the time that I've gotten to know him, at least in terms of as a guest. But my point here is that he's somebody who is he's extremely nuanced. He's a man of great character, of faith. He's a family man. He sees big picture. And I think he is the perfect voice to get out in front of this, not just to talk about Henry Ruggs, which he has done, but to talk about this situation more broadly. He's your leader on the field, and I believe he is absolutely capable and fully aware of the situation beyond the field. And I think he needs to be the leader here.
Okay, Christopher, as you mentioned, you are in Fresno, and you did touch on this on the last question, but you have seen Derek Carr blossom from a college quarterback to a professional and one of the leaders on the Raiders team. Please describe to our listeners what you've seen in his overall development.
Well, I think from Derek's days at Fresno State, which predated me a little bit, but as somebody who went to college in California, I was always very much dialed into what he was doing in Bulldog Stadium. I think what we've seen from him there and here with the Raiders is a guy who he lets the game come to him. I have before I got into broadcasting, I was a stage actor in New York, and there's an old phrase: don't play the script. Let the script play you. And I think that when Derek first came to the Raiders, he was trying to play the script. He was trying to force things that weren't there. He was trying to let everybody know, I've got the arm, I've got the wherewithal, I can read defenses, I've got vision, I've got it all going. And I think over time, what's happened is, and I know it's an overused phrase, but he really has let the game come to him. He has let the script, the game, play him. And what we're seeing is so much more often now, he's putting the ball in the right place at the right time to the right player. And if it's not there, he's going through his progressions much better. He's not taking off unless he absolutely has to. He's just, it's like Tony Gwynn used to say when he was with the Padres. He said, I'm just seeing the ball so well. And sometimes that ball comes in and I feel like I'm seeing a baseball that's twice the size of the actual ball. And I feel like things as time has gone on, as he has gotten more seasoned as a player, I really feel that the game is a little bit more in slow motion for Derek. And he is somebody who, I've said this forever. I've said that I really believe that he has top 10 talent and could be a top 5 quarterback, but a lot of things have gotten his way. He hasn't always had the best offensive line. He hasn't always had receivers that have the best hands. I don't know that he always had the right plays, the right playbook, the right philosophy. I think all of that has changed. And I'm going to tell you, and people here in the Central Valley know this, Heidi and Tom, I said I did not believe when John Gruden got to Las Vegas that Derek Carr was going to be his quarterback. I was wrong. I'm glad I was wrong. And quite honestly, if there was one person who was going to outlast the other, I thought it was going to be John Gruden outlasting Derek Carr in Las Vegas. But who knew this was going to happen? When Derek Carr says, I only want to play for the Raiders, I believe him. I didn't at first, but I believe him now. And I do believe he is a guy that I don't think we've seen the ceiling yet. I truly do not believe we've seen the ceiling yet.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And of course, in talking about Derek Carr this year, he's indicated many times not only does he want to hoist a Super Bowl trophy, but he really wants to hoist it for the Las Vegas organization. So having said that, in your estimation, is this year's Raiders team a true playoff caliber team?
Well, that's a good question. I've got two answers for that. In terms of personnel, in terms of scheme, particularly in defense. I mean, this is a team that, again, not telling you guys in your audience anything you don't know. This is a team defensively that has been, 26th, 28th, 29th, 30th. I mean, they've been at the bottom of the league. And last I checked, they were 11th. In team defense. I don't care about yards. Look, I'll go off on a sidetrack for a second. Orlando Steinauer, the head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats in the CFL, he used to be the defensive coordinator for Jeff Tedford when Tedford was coaching his 3 years when he came back here. And he told me once, I don't care about yards. Did we win the game? I don't care if we give up 1,000 bleeping yards as long as we win the game. And so when I look at the yardage and the Raiders are giving up, I don't care about that. Are you winning games? They're 5-3. They are right there. And are they a playoff team in that sense, in terms of the personnel they have? I believe they are. I think the problem that they have is who made this schedule up, because they are facing a brutal schedule these last 9 games. I mean, they've got Kansas City twice. They've got to go to Cleveland. They've got Dallas. Denver is looking better. They've got to go to Indianapolis. And then, oh, by the way, they get to play the Chargers at home. It's a gauntlet. But I think that we might be seeing a situation where in the AFC West, a lot of these teams, curious what you guys think, a lot of these teams may beat up on each other. The Chiefs clearly clearly are not the Chiefs that we saw a couple of years ago. I mean, how many media members in the country, and quite honestly, I'm one of them, we were ready to anoint the Chiefs as the next New England Patriots. I think we've seen that's not the case. Not an indictment on them, but they are not what they were. And this may be the window for the Raiders to step in and say, hey, you know what? We're here. And unlike the last 2 years, we're not going to have that last 5 or 6 games, 7 games where we start out 6-3, 6-4, and then we fall apart. If this team can finish, if they can finally finish the last third of the year, then I believe they'll be a playoff team.
And I agree with you. I think that's the whole thing. When we get to the 6-3 record, which is what we have gotten to the last couple of years, everybody's scratching their heads and saying, okay, is this the year that we break through the glass ceiling, or are we just going to fall back into the same pattern that we have for years?
Just to follow up with that, that's right. It's uncanny because I'm almost afraid to say, you know, if they win their next game, if they beat Kansas City at Allegiant, and I think they will, and I think, you know, they're going to be able to turn. And I say this very gingerly, they're going to be able to turn what's happened with Gruden on one side of it, and then certainly the tragedy. They're going to rally together as teams are wont to do. And I really do believe they're going to beat Kansas City on the 14th. But I think that I'm just afraid to say, well, here we go. Let's say they beat Kansas City. Yeah, they're 6-3 again. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that because, you know, we know what happens next. Hopefully they'll be able to figure this out this time.
Right. Now, Christopher, you're from Chicago and you follow the Bears. Now I want to get your whole take on the Khalil Mack trade, even though it happened 3 years ago. Do you think it was the right move for the Raiders?
All right, let me preface my answer. I am a born and raised Chicagoan. I'm from Rogers Park, which is on the north side of Chicago. I mean, I was born a half a mile from Wrigley Field. I was baptized 1 mile from Wrigley, and I grew up a mile and a half from Wrigley, but I'm a White Sox fan. So in Chicago, as Bears fans, let me tell you what Bears fans are like, and I'm going to answer your question, but you need this backdrop. As a Bears fan, as soon as the Bears win a game, we are all like, I'm going to tell you what, the Bears are going to the Super Bowl. That's exactly right. We're going 17-0. As soon as the Bears lose a game, I hate them. They're bums. I'm burning my jersey. They're garbage. And so with that in mind, when this trade was made a few years ago, initially, I thought that the winner of this trade, even though I was excited to see Khalil Mack come to Chicago, I really felt like the draft choices and what have you, that was going to tip the scales into what the Raiders were trying to do, what Gruden was trying to do. Now it's a couple of years later, and I should have known better, because we all know that much like draft choices in general, you really can't make a judgment until you see how they pan off. And so you look at the Bears. The Bears get Khalil Mack, and since he came, they had a couple of playoff berths. They won a division title. Prior to his arrival, they couldn't even win 7 games. One of the picks that they got, the second-round pick, turned into Cole Kmet. Is he going to be a bona fide winner? I don't know, but he's showing some good stuff. Meanwhile, on the other side of this, so the Raiders picks out of this, they get it turns into Josh Jacobs. We all understand what he's turned into. Brian Edwards, same thing. Now we have the Damon Arnett situation where, I mean, he was released, I believe, today, if I'm not mistaken. And when this trade was made, it reminded me a lot of the infamous Herschel Walker Vikings-Dallas trade, where Herschel comes to the Vikings, and all that happens is Dallas's picks, 3 of the picks turn into Emmitt Smith, Russell Maryland, and Darren Woodson, and that helps lead them to 3 Super Bowls. Long story short, and it may be too late for that, I think I'm going to tip the scale right now to the Bears just a little bit, simply because of the impact that Khalil Mack has had, and because he's managed to get the Bears somewhere where in the previous 3, 4, 5 years, they really had 4 years, I think it is, they hadn't gone. The Raiders haven't quite gotten there yet. I think it's a pretty close area, a pretty close trade between the two, but I'm going to tip the scale to the Bears. But again, not because I'm a Chicago fan, because I am very quick to rip on the Bears. I've burned a couple of things in my life. Let me just tell you that right now. But I do tip it that way a little bit. But Josh Jacobs, I mean, he is such a real deal for this team. He may end up tipping this thing the other way.
Yeah, as much as I like to agree with you on that, I'm not so sure. We've been talking about on the podcast Josh Jacobs has been injured quite a bit in
Mm-hmm.
the short time he's been here, and to pick up his 5th-year option, that would cost the Raiders almost $10 million. I'm not so sure that he's going to be on the docket to be brought back.
It's a great point that you're making, and it does beg the question: do the Raiders take the chance because of the nicks, bangs, bruises, and the games that he's missed? Do they take the chance, realizing the talent he has, or do they see him as somebody who's going to be? I don't want to say Sam Bowie, the old Sam Bowie of Portland Trailblazers, where it's going to be somebody that's constantly finding himself out. I don't know. I'm not close enough to the situation. My concern would be, and this is who knows. My concern would be, you know what? We're not going to pick up that option. We're going to cut him loose, and then he goes somewhere else and becomes an All-Pro.
And that's a possibility. And I would agree with you that the Bears, I think, have gotten the better end of the trade. I would not have said that about a year and a half ago, but the Bears have just done a better job of hanging on to their capital.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. And listen, I know this is not the Bears podcast, but I'll just say the Bears are one of the most dysfunctional organizations in professional sports. God bless Virginia McCaskey, but nobody knows what the hell they're doing over there. They can't even get the field right, for heaven's sakes. The field is the worst in football. So to say that the Bears I'm tipping the scales a little bit to the Bears here over the it almost pains me. I'm cringing to say it because I feel like the Raiders are that close to saying, yeah, we got the better of that, but not quite yet.
So are you telling me that the riff on the Saturday Night Live skit on the Bears fans is accurate?
Oh, yeah. Those guys, it's kind of the romantic version of Bears fans, because that is what we all sound like. I mean, I'm talking this way to you here, but I'm telling you, if we go to Chicago and we go to the Billy Goat Tavern and we go to Gino's East Pizza or Giordano's, suddenly I'm going to be like, let me tell you what, Heidi, I'm going to tell you, Tom, the friggin' Bears are going to bring back Ditka. That's what
Jim
what
McMahon.
it turns into. Well, of course, you mentioned quarterbacks. Of course, when I think Bears and quarterbacks, all I think about is the great future Hall of Famers, people like Shane Matthews, Cade McNown, and Rex Grossman. Oh,
don't forget Steve Fuller.
Steve Fuller, yes. Oh, it's a parade of fools. I'm serious.
All right,
goodness,
Christopher, how do people in the Fresno area, getting back to where you are, how do people in the Fresno area feel toward the Raiders? And do you think the Raiders organization needs to do more in order to satisfy the existing California fan base?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that. Let's go to the latter part of that question. They need to do much more, because this is an area that, and certainly Heidi, having lived here, you understand this only too well. If you talk to a Raiders fan, they'll say, hey, Raiders fans outdo Niners fans in this area 3-1. You talk to a Niners fan, they're going to tell you the same thing. I've seen that it strikes me that it's split. If it's anything, it's 55-45 one way or the other, give or take. But when the Raiders moved to Las Vegas, and I mean, again, I've been here since the time that they left. This area feels like it's been abandoned by the Raiders, and there are a lot of Raiders fans here. Raiders games come into this area, and I feel like the Raiders have a gold mine here. There's 1.1 million people in this area, and a lot of them are Raiders fans, and I don't think the Raiders have done nearly as good a job as they could to curry favor with fans who have generations of families who have lived in the Central Valley, whether they are in business, whether they are in law, in medicine, whether they are farmers, almond farmers, raisin farmers, they have orange groves. You have people here, you see Raiders hats and Raiders jerseys everywhere. And people here, the ones who, when you see in those jerseys, they love the Raiders. I know so many people who have gone to every home game, people who have gone, whether they're season ticket holders or they're going and buying tickets or scalping tickets and they're getting in there. This area is, listen, make no mistake, there's a heavy 49ers base, as I said, but there is a heavy Raiders base here. And I do believe that the Raiders have, if they haven't dropped the ball, they've just let it roll down the court a little bit, and they could and they should and they need to do a better job of getting this area back in the mix with who they are and Allegiant Stadium and the silver and black.
Totally agree. And I asked the question because it reminds me of two natives of that area who are very well known. One comes from Sanger, who is Hall of Famer Tom Flores, and the other is from Dale City, who is Hall of Famer John Madden.
Let me tell you something about Tom Flores. When he went into the hall, we were doing a special. They have a thing every year here called the World Ag Expo, and I was hosting a special show that day with the voice of Fresno State football and a good friend of mine, Paul Leffler. And Paul and I had Tom on, and it was a great thrill to have a chance to talk to him. And I'll share a couple of things that he said to that day. One of them was, to this day, it bothers him that the Raiders left Oakland. It bothers him. He said, he goes, I understand it. I get the move. I know why they did it. But to me, the Raiders are Oakland, and they never should have left. And a side story for you, and it just kind of broke our hearts listening to it, and so glad that he's in the hall because it's overdue and so well deserved. He was talking about him and his wife down in Atlanta. For the, if it was Atlanta, Tampa, where he was for the Super Bowl, but he thought he was getting the knock on the door. And I remember him telling us the knock didn't come, and he and his wife said, there's no reason to stay. He said, we got our bags together, we left the hotel, we changed our flights, and we went home. We didn't bother staying for the Super Bowl. That's how depressed he was. That's how much it mattered to Coach Flores to get into the hall. And I think the sense that I got was it mattered to him not even so much because it was a personal thing, but because of the players, because of the bond that he had with all of the great players that he had and the organization as a whole. That's why it meant so much to him. And you could just feel that. And you just loved this area loves him, as you well know. Sanger loves him. And for him to get in and have a chance to talk for about 20 minutes with him, it was a great thrill.
I am so happy that he and his entire family and the people that he represented got to see that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And when I got to Fresno 7 years ago, it was Super Bowl week, and one of the first guests that I had on my show, Tom Flores, and I reminded him of it, and he said he remembered, and whether he did or didn't, he was so gracious to say that. You just, when you look at people who have gotten players who have gotten into the Hall of Fame, and you always hope, right, as fans, we want these iconic coaches and athletes to be a certain way. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But when I think of Hall of Fame coaches or players, and I think of someone who was at the top of their profession, someone who is at the top of being a human being, someone who is just classy to a fault and constantly thinks about and puts others before himself, that is Tom Flores.
And that's a great note to wrap up this interview on. Thanks once again to Christopher Gabriel, our special guest, for joining us on the Only Nation podcast. And Christopher, can you tell our listeners once again how they can both find and follow you?
Oh, I would love them to follow me. And I love to, can I just say on Twitter, I'm at CG Program, the letter CG and then the word programs, at CG Program. I always like to tell this. I say that to broadcast journalism students when I speak to them, that I love to engage on Twitter. And if you are following me, we're going to go back and forth. We're going to have some fun. We're not going to scream and get personal. But my point here is that it makes me nuts with people that are begging for followers and wanting to get people to follow, and then they never comment to them. They never talk to them. They never respond. That's not the case with me. Let's talk some Raiders football. Let's talk some NFL. Let's talk about Heidi and Tom. Let's do that.
Christopher, thank you so much. And I'll tell you what, fans, I've listened to his program several times. You haven't had a chance to go on to the CG program. So I got tongue-tied there. It is worth your time. It is worth your time to invest because he's so knowledgeable on not just Raiders and not just football, but a variety of sports and news topics as well.
Well, I appreciate that. I started in News Talk, and I'm so glad that I had that background. And then I, went to sports, and then did a lot with Fresno State football for 4 years, and then back in news. But I have my own show on the weekend. I host Fresno's Morning News Monday through Friday, and as you so kindly said early on, hosting on KNBR in San Francisco a week or so ago. My hands are both always deeply involved in sports, the NFL, college football, hockey, even, if we have to talk about highlight and cricket, we'll do that too.
Hey, Christopher, let's do this again sometime.
I am at your disposal. Anytime you want to talk a little Las Vegas Raiders, I am here for you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you again.
Sure thing.
And now a word about our sponsor.
All right, Heidi, thank you. More is always better. That's why MyBookie instantly doubles all first time deposits. With double the funds, you can double your action and, more importantly, double your wins. Getting in on the action has never been easier. I can bet with all my favorite currencies, including crypto, and with all that extra scratch, why not get in on the biggest matchups of the week at MyBookie? As we inch closer to the NFL playoffs, there are some pivotal games to be on the lookout for this weekend, including a showdown between divisional rivals when the San Francisco 49ers take on the Los Angeles Rams. Behind MVP candidate Matt Stafford, the Rams are looking to continue rolling as they take on the fierce 49er defense. The Rams are legit. Bet them to cover the spread. Don't wait. Head to MyBookie today to redeem your double deposit bonus so you can get in the game and start winning now. Use our promo code ONLYNATION to receive double your first deposit instantly. That's promo code ONLYNATION so you can double your funds to double your winnings. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Thank you, T3. And why don't you give us your top 3 for the week?
T3's top 3.
All right, here is this week's top 3. Number 1, Darren Waller came back after being out, but he didn't have nearly as many big plays against the Giants as I thought or hoped that he would. Derek Carr is going to have to go to him early and often, like he did way back in the first game of the season, and let his Pro Bowl tight end go off. The Chiefs may know it's coming, but that's okay. Good teams go to their strength, exert their will, and dominate. That's what I want to see. Number 2, the Carr haters are back with a vengeance. Look, Derek had a bad game, but at the end, the Raiders were still in the game. This wasn't Atlanta from last year, and this team is not last year's team. Derek can bounce back from this, and I think he will. And I'm looking forward to the results. In other words, I ain't scared. And number 3, anyone within the sound of my voice who has any chance to make it to Vegas this Sunday night, I highly encourage you to do so. Kansas City has never played against a fully animated and revved up crowd inside Allegiant Stadium, and I want everyone to bring a noise level that no one else has ever heard before. The Chiefs' uniform already has one yellow stripe down the leg, so no one would really notice the difference if there was more than one, if you know what I'm saying. And that is this week's top 3.
That's very cute. I don't think I would notice either. Yes, I would. I'd make fun of them.
We all would.
Yeah. Darren Waller, it was good to see him back. He actually had a better game quietly than I thought he did. I didn't really realize it, but he had 7 receptions for 92 yards and a long of 24 yards. So he actually did have an impact. It was just a very quiet impact.
Yes, it was quiet.
And I like the idea of feeding him. He is hungry. Give him a giant game to break out. He could use that.
And this is the game he wants to really break out in anyway.
Yeah.
He would like to show Travis Kelce a thing or two.
Oh, yeah. And he should. And you're right. The Carr haters are back with the vengeance. Carr had a terrible game. It was one game.
Tom Brady even throws pick sixes once in a while.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes has not looked too sharp this year either.
No, he hasn't. He's come back to earth.
We'll see what happens. Derek will pull it out. I have faith in him. And you're right. We need that home crowd. We need the noise factor to go crazy in Allegiant Stadium. I know that opposing teams' fans have bought up a lot of tickets and gotten a lot of comp tickets to get in there. Raiders fans need to come in and just show them out.
They do.
That simple. They really do.
The noise level has to be louder than it's been ever.
Do they have a noise meter there? We should ask Homer.
I don't know. I think they do, but I'm not positive. They have everything else.
Well, they need to. That'll give the crowd some motivation. All right, give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media, and we'll share your thoughts. And T3, why don't you tell us about what Raider Roots is up to?
All right, this week we're going to feature the year 1973. There is going to be a little bit of information there as to how the term cheating is encouraged got its start. So if you're interested in that, make sure you tune in.
All right, and let's find out what we do or don't know.
All right, it's time for another edition of Did You Know? In this segment, I will ask Heidi and the rest of our listening audience a Raiders-related question with 3 possible answers to choose from. It's multiple choice, so just give it your best guess. So here goes. Here's this week's question. When is the last time that a Kansas City Chiefs player ran for 100 or more yards against the Raiders defense? Is the answer A, 2016, B, 2017, or C, 2018? Heidi, what's your guess?
Well, let's see. Our defense was pretty bad in 17 and 18. So I would say it's a toss-up between those two. Although that probably means it's 16.
So what's your guess?
2018.
The answer is 2017. It happened in December in Kansas City. But they've been almost 4 years now without giving up a running back 100 or more yards to Kansas City.
See, I guessed B last week, so I figured I would guess C this week.
Yeah, I just kind of flip them all around.
That's not very nice. You need to make this easier on me.
Okay. I promise I will make next week's question easier.
Okay, thank you. Well, the last time you had an easy question, it was hard. We need Homer back.
We do.
I do a lot better in this segment when Homer's here.
You do. When he's here, you nail him almost every time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make it easier next week.
Okay.
All right. Now, normally Homer gets to announce this, but I get to do it one more time. And here we go. It is now time, Raider Nation, for Heidi's Heroes.
Thank you, T3. This week, I have chosen a hero who has partnered up with Credit One Bank. They are sponsoring a program that will support Las Vegas-based charities, After School All-Stars and Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada. And those are charities that help youth in Las Vegas to succeed and reach their full potential. It is called the One for the Community program. And what's going to happen this season is for each successful extra point kicked by the Raiders during the regular season, Credit One Bank will donate $2,000. At the end of the season, the funds raised will be split evenly between After School All-Stars and Boys and Girls Clubs of Southern Nevada. Well, who's our extra point kicker?
That will be Daniel Carlson.
Daniel Carlson, you are my hero for this week. About this, he said, I'm excited to join in assisting 2 incredible Las Vegas youth charities, which the Raiders have supported for several years. Both After School All-Stars and Boys and Girls Club of Southern Nevada provide our Valley's youth a safe and positive environment and affords them the opportunity to succeed in school and life. Daniel Carlson, keep kicking those extra points. We'll have to tell Derek to keep scoring those touchdowns, so you'll have those extra points to kick. But Daniel, you are my hero this week for your leg.
The pride of Auburn University, well-deserved. Daniel, we love you. Keep kicking those balls right through the uprights.
That's right. And that about does it for this week on the Only Nation podcast. Next week, our missing co-host, Homer, is supposed to be back.
We are keeping our fingers crossed. We're looking forward to getting Homer back with us.
we are going to welcome him for sure. I'm really excited to see him back. So, fingers crossed. We'd like to thank our sponsors, MyBookie and Chucky's Thugs, for sponsoring this episode. And if you'd like to help support the show, you can send in a donation at paypal.me/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @KevlarPromDress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube on Captain Jack Rackham's channel every other Tuesday night. Join the DC wench Peggy Holmes and Angria Trask on the Captain and His Wenches show.
All right, Raider Nation, we want you with us every step of the way during the regular season. So here's what we'd like you to do. Send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raiders swag and podcast stickers. Call us and tell us what you want to know. Throw us an interesting nugget that we can use on one of our upcoming episodes and become a part of what we're doing here. Remember, this is the only nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. And once again, I want to thank our special guest, Christopher Gabriel, for coming on to our program with us. We look forward to talking with him again very, very soon. Now, there are two easy ways to find me on social media. You can send me a tweet at T3_sports703, or you can hit me up on Facebook at Tom, Thom Jones. I'll do my best to respond back, and I would love to include your comments on an upcoming show. Thank you for tuning in, also getting involved, and thank you for your continued support of the Raider Roots podcast.
As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, go Raiders.
We are not just a nation, we are the only nation, and we're back home. Beat the Chiefs. Raiders.
Yay! Okay. Ending backup recording now.
Got it.